Let's look at Sweden for a moment. Sweden used to be a white country. It used to be a safe and orderly, successful and productive country. In fact, more than 10 years ago, the British newspaper, The Guardian, declared Sweden the most successful society the world has ever known. The problems Sweden is facing today had only just started, and I am afraid they do not know how this snowballed out of control. No one knows how many non-whites truly live in the country today, because registers and statistics based on ethnicity are not legal, but most level-headed people estimate the non-white population is between 17 to 25% of the total population. In the three biggest cities, Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmö, the non-white population exceeds 40%, and in Malmö, it's beyond 60%. The consequence of this has been disastrous. Malmö is to a great degree a war zone of ethnic gangs, rapes and murders. School standards are dropping drastically, as non-white students drive the whites out, and 9 out of 10 fail primary education. In the 1960s, Sweden, with a population of only a little over 7 million, had less than 10 homicides. That's the lowest murder rate of any region with that population in human history. Only countries such as Iceland, of 330,000 people, and the Faroe Islands, of 49,000, have had similar numbers, with 0 murders for many decades. Today, only 50 years later, Sweden has hundreds of murders every single year, more than 3/4 of which are committed by non-whites. The birth rates are far below the replacement level, and the influx of non-whites exceeds 100,000 per year, with the average Swedish city having only a population of about 40,000 people. Ethnic Swedes have, at least on 2 occasions, been evicted from their homes to allow for the housing of non-white refugees. The Migration Authority are actively buying up castles and historical buildings, hotels and mansions just to house non-whites, and the Nordic welfare state under which Sweden had governed is grumbling under its growing non-white burden. How did this all happen? It all began in 1964, when the Holocaust survivor, David Schwartz, had published an article in one of Sweden's newspapers, DN, in which he criticized the so-called foreigner problem, and argued for a more tolerant and open border policy. Schwartz was the first person to seriously lobby for Sweden's cultural pluralism. David Schwartz became a good friend and advisor of Olof Palme, the Sweden Prime Minister, and was the single most important influence on the 1973 policy change in which Sweden, according to law, was to become a multicultural society. That same year, Schwartz had published another pro-immigration study, which served as a groundwork for the policy change. Those who agitated for multiculturalism, and newspaper debates for cultural pluralism, were foreign-born, and, in every sense, a Jewish call for change. Sweden has about 5 large newspapers, which are owned by 3 media conglomerates, operated as family businesses. Bonnier Group is controlled by the Swedish Jewish Bonnier family, and owns the newspapers, DN, Expressen, Sydsvenskan, HD, and Dagens Industri. They also have a virtual monopoly on the publishing industry as well. The Stampen Group is owned by chief editor, Peter Jorn, from a Jewish family. Its flagship newspaper, Gothenburg Post, is read by 2/3 of Greater Gothenburg. The Jorn Group nearly owns all local newspapers in the country. Seasteading is a Norwegian media group, which in turn is financed by many foreign banks, such as one of its owners, Goldman Sachs. The Evening Post, owned by Seasteading, is the largest newspaper in Sweden, with many Jewish staffers. Sweden's largest TV network is the state-sponsored SVT, which is supported by taxpayer money, and operates on a so-called objective basis, but is part of the same liberal, anti-white establishment, like the rest of Swedish media. Sweden's second-largest television network is TV4, and was a fully owned subsidiary of the Bonnier Broadcasting Group, until 2018, with Swedish Jew, Jan Sherman, being known for the president of the TV4 group. Sweden's privately owned surveillance on far-right movements, and anti-racism magazine, is known as Expo, founded by communists and left-wing extremists. They closely cooperate with an anti-racism magazine, Searchlight, by Jerry Gable and Morris Ludmer, both anti-fascist British Jews. In a shocking turn of events, Searchlight was put under some strain, when it maintained a close relationship with pro-Zionist groups, which were regarded as a racist ideology by other anti-racist groups, and by chance, lost its prominence. after pointing it out. TV host and media personality Robert Ashberg is also a board member of the journal Expo, and published an article about xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and attacks on democracy. His grandfather, Olaf Ashberg, a communist sympathizer and financier, helped convey financial resources to Bolsheviks in Russia. He received 500 tons of confiscated gold, became the head of the First International Soviet Bank, and once the communist regime had banned religion and destroyed Russian churches, he was rewarded with loot and religious property. A decade later, he wrote memoirs which revealed his Jewish identity, much like how we now know Jews had a disproportionate role in the first Soviet government and the communist revolution. So, here we are, a beautiful and prosperous white nation, ruined by these media mobsters, of a particular ethnic origin, that account for less than 1% of the population, and who want Sweden to be overrun by non-whites. How is the Swedish population reacting to this racial and national catastrophe? Are they organizing on a racial basis to violently take down the government? Are they urging their fellow countrymen to instigate a civil war? Will they lay the groundwork for a revolution with political execution? Or are they going after media headquarters? No, they are simply moving further and further away from the growing non-white population, and then have the audacity to vote for the Feminist Party in the European elections, giving them one seat to represent Sweden. The same party that wants to abolish the nation and its borders, remove the military, and to make racial and gender quotas required by law in every facet of human life. Now that many people are old enough to have lived in Sweden when it was still white, to have witnessed the politically invasive measures, they think the situation is hopeless. The Sweden of youth may just fade from memory.